And when your results can speak louder than your resume, life becomes pretty easy.
Oh my goodness. Welcome everyone. Thanks so much for being here with the community at eXp Realty, the greatest real estate brokerage on the planet. And I am so very excited because we've got an awesome day. We have an incredible guest today. And I know we're going to have a really fun time. All right. So that I don't want to burn up a ton of space here at the beginning, let me bring up John Sellers, because John really put this together for us. And all of you, of course, know the amazing John Sellers, great coach, epic leader here inside the community. And John reached out to a very good friend of ours to ask, hey, would you be willing to do something for us? And I want John to have the opportunity to bring his guest up on stage for the community. John, thanks for being here. Really appreciate you as always, my friend.
Hey guys, I am so excited that we have got Hank Avink here today. And Hank is a buddy of mine. I don't know. We've been friends now, and I think, what, 5, 6 years? And
At least.
I know, crazy. And Hank's actually coached me through the years. I've been to different coaches. He was one of the top bold coaches at Keller Williams for years. Broke away, had his own huge coaching business. Today is one of the top EXP leaders, alpha leaders at EXP. And I just asked him I was nervous. And I said, maybe I can get Hank to help a little bit. And he just jumped right up and said, no problem, buddy. When can I do it? So he is going to bring it today about production. What I love about Hank and why him and I get along so well is, as you guys know me, we don't cut a lot of words. Like, we get down to it, cut through it. Sometimes we have to ask for forgiveness, but we're better about just stepping forward. So you're going to get the straight skinny today. So thanks, Hank.
Okay. Perfect. So Jeff, we ready to jump right in, or what do you think?
Well, yeah, and I just put in the chat, by the way. So for anyone who doesn't really know Hank, like, Hank is pretty legendary as a coach in our industry. He's coached myself, Lexi, John, like a lot of the top leaders inside the community, inside EXP at large. Like, it's a really great opportunity to have somebody who thinks differently in our industry. And one of my experiences with Hank is every time I talk to Hank, my brain gets twisted around like a pretzel, and I always walk away with a different perspective and an opportunity to see things differently. And that perspective shift is valid. It's not just scrambling the eggs, right? It's giving you clarity by helping you to get rid of some limiting beliefs and thoughts. And I have to say, from the bottom of my heart, I love Hank. I think you're an amazing man. And I was super thrilled when John said, hey, I reached out to Hank. I've got him coming on. He said yes. And it also just shows who John is as a leader, to always be thinking ahead and trying to provide top level value. So yeah, jump in, man. Take over. It's your call.
Could you send all that to my mom? Because like, I'm just listening to it. I'm like, man, this is fantastic. And, here's what I'm most proud of. My results speak louder than my resume. And there's a lot of people we know that have great resumes, but we all know that those resumes can be built up. And when your results can speak louder than your resume, life becomes pretty easy. And so here's where I'd like to go, John, and Jeff and Lexi, feel free to jump in, but I'd like to bring through a modality. The first one is, do you have an income problem? So feel free to answer in the chat if you'd like to. And here's what I mean by an income problem. I remember ways back when I made my first $100,000. Who's made $100,000 before in a year? I should clarify, in a year, because there's a difference between doing it in a year and doing it in a month. But in a year, and I remember the first time I made $100,000, I was like, oh, like it was like the sun's parted, and it's like, why would I ever need to make more? Now the thought of making $100,000, like I couldn't take care of my family the way I take care of my family making 100 grand. And nothing against, if you're not at 100 grand yet, don't compare my chapter 27 to your chapter 2. That's not fair for you or for me. Yet at some point we have to freeze our lifestyle, because who's ever had their lifestyle creep where you go and you make 100 and it's more than enough, then it's not enough, then you go to 150, and then it just keeps going and going and going. Can you guys relate to the lifestyle creep, or is that just me? So here's what I'm going to ask that you do. Everybody figure out how they solve their income problem. And so for my wife and I, we decided that our net life income number is 360 grand a year. As long as we can make 360 grand a year, and again, if my numbers are smaller than yours, that's okay. If my numbers are bigger than yours, just insert your numbers. And here's what a net life income number means. As long as we make blank, we can do everything that we want to be able to do. And at 360,000 played out over the next 20 years, my wife and I can do everything that we want to be able to do. Some years it's a little bit less because our kids are more expensive. But as long as we're making 360 grand a year, we don't have an income problem. Before we move on to the next phase, do you guys have any questions on that around determining whether or not you have an income problem?
Hank, I think the question would be is breaking it back to when you talk income, is that gross revenue? Is that after tax dollars? What does that mean specifically?
Yes, just the fact that you're asking those questions tells me is answer it to the best of what works for you. Because frankly, one of the challenges that I have with our industry, for example, real estate teams, when I dial back the numbers, a lot of times you doing just 36 transactions will net more money than a large real estate team doing 136 transactions. And so you got to make sure the game that you're playing is adding up. So I look at, so when I do 360, that's including my taxes that would be liable for that. So it's a little bit of a profit first type game where money comes in. So write this down. Stop feeling your money. When you stop feeling your money, whether you make 30 grand in a month or 40 grand in a month, it doesn't change anything, because if you have the right systems in, the money comes in and then it filters out, and you no longer make decisions based on if you're ahead of goal, if you're behind goal. So once we solve the income problem, then what we do is we look to create a schedule that we like, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. So John, it's whatever you choose for it to be. You just got to be consistent with how you frame that. Does that answer your question?
Sure.
So, any other questions around determining whether or not you have an income problem? Most people that I talk to don't have an income problem. We go to the next phase, which is cash flow. Who besides me has ever had a cash flow problem? We all have, right? Now, let me ask you this. If you have a cash flow problem, do you make different decisions if you're worried about cash flow? 100%. Alex Hermosi, who I follow, he goes, I can always tell what people's wealth is based on how far out they're making decisions. What I'm going to encourage you to do is you got to figure out how to solve your cash flow problem. Quick little story. I was in marriage therapy with my wife, and we did it for a lot of years. I mean, it was like 5 years before we got fired from our therapist, because he said, I need to go help people that actually need it. We're just being proactive here, and you're being a baby by not having the conversation with your wife. You wait for Jeff on Friday. Yet I digressed. 12 minutes into it, she's talking about a $20 t-shirt. I go, Jeff, this is the problem. He goes, well, what do you mean? I go, Jeff, do you know how much money I make or we make? And he goes, no, I think you do pretty well. I go, we've made 400 grand this year, and it's never enough for my wife. She's worried about a $20 t-shirt. And here's what she wanted. She wanted safety and security. And until we put numbers around her feeling safe and secure, enough was never enough. Can anybody relate to enough never being enough? Where, I was 18 years old. I'd get the ATM slip that said I had $54, and I was excited because we could drink the good beer. Now, if I had $54 in my account, I'd probably have it fall over and have a heart attack, because what happens is our levels change. So here's what I'm going to encourage you to do. Where is that sweet spot for you to solve your cash flow problem? And here's what it did for us back in the day. $50,000 through the tax filter sitting in our money market account allowed my wife to not question everything that I'm doing in what I call CFO, chill the blank out. I'm not sure if we're swearing on here, so I won't. And it allowed her to not have to worry about the next 30, 60, 90 days. And we could start making decisions in year-long increments. Who thinks you can make better decisions when you're thinking a year out versus 30 days out? So now, and you got to look at how your income's coming in. Income can come into your bucket different ways. Most people I know are transactional. They have to show up to get paid. How many of you are where you have to show up to get paid? Meaning you're only as good as your next 30, 60, 90 days. Now, and you don't have to raise your hand. That's okay. But if you have all transactional income coming in, it's dependent on you. I'm going to encourage that number to be higher. I hear, the average 3 to 6 months. 6 months is where I would encourage you to be of all your expenses. But as you start to get recurring income or leveraged income, you don't have to carry as much there because it's more guaranteed. Jeff and John or Lexi, how much do you want to go into income management in that? Because we could go on the weeds, or I think we should probably stay a little bit higher level right now.
Let's do it. Let's stay higher level.
Okay, perfect. And we'll leave time at the end so that we can go back and dig into any part that you want. So once you solve your cash flow problem, and for most people, having 6 months there will allow you to make longer term decisions. Then what we get to do is we get to referee our life. And I'm gonna have everybody write down these letters. And I got this cool vibe board, and I might use it during this. Jeff, did you make me a co-host under Hank Avink Vibe?
Yep.
Okay, cool. That'll allow me to share the screen if we choose to do that. So write down the letters REF. That stands for relationships, energy, finances. So what you get to do once you don't have an income problem, then you don't have a cash flow problem, then what you get to do is you get to referee your life. So relationships. John is a relationship that's important to me. We have more than one trip around the sun. John and I share a lot of the same values, and John's not going to ask anything of me that I know that he wouldn't do in return. He values my time. He values my energy. Same with Jeff and Lexi. So when they reached out and said, Hank, would you like to do this? I was at a yes. I was at a yes. I didn't even check my schedule. I just said, yeah, I can do it. I had another call scheduled at this time, and I knew that somebody else would have my back to do it because I knew I would be able to serve more people here. So I get to referee my life. So a relationship reached out. I said yes. Now I'm going to check my energy after of it. And Jeff, your energy was like off the hook. Maybe a little bit too high for me, but I'll always err on someone having too much energy. Would we agree with that? Like somebody having greater energy, I'll take that all day long. And so take care of your relationships. I know my energy after this call will be better. So I don't have to worry about the finances because I know I'm not stupid. Everybody tracking with that? Because I know if I reached out to John, Jeff, or Lexi and I needed something without hesitation, because they're givers, they'd be right there for me within reason. Because you'll never outgive a giver. In fact, write that down. You'll never outgive a giver. I don't like the saying, give enough rope to hang, give enough rope to someone to hang themselves. I have found in our company, if you give to the givers, you'll always get it back. And you don't give to get back. You just give because if I give, I know that John will give to somebody else, and it might not be directly to me, but it does end up coming around in karma bucks, if that makes sense. So now let's look at that. You got relationships, you got energy and finances. You don't have to worry about the finances because you're not stupid. So who knows what a one sheet is? Can anybody tell me what a one sheet is? Anybody? Go ahead, John. You tell me what a one sheet is.
Basically your overall goals and finances in one sheet.
Yep, that's all it is. It's one sheet where you can see your income. And here's what I'm going to encourage all of you to do. Create a one sheet. And the one sheet is, okay, I'm going to make X amount from buyers. I'm going to make X amount from sellers. I'm going to make X amount in revenue share. I'm going to make X amount in rental income. I'm going to make X amount and send out cards. I'm going to make X amount in this. And what you're going to do is you're going to take from the book Lean Startup, which is a great book, by the way, and you're going to create three numbers. The first number is red light. If I can't make blank doing this, then I need to subtract it out. And I have a lot of my business tattoos or business principles tattooed on me. This one says subtraction leads to multiplication. Most people keep doing addition. And here's an example of that. At some point, most of us stopped working with as many buyers as what we did in the beginning because we are higher leverage working with sellers. So we subtracted out working with as many buyers to work with more sellers because there was higher leverage and greater control there and we could make more money. Would everybody agree with that equation? It's not always 100% true, but it's an example. So here's what we do. We create three numbers for every income source. You got red light, which means if I can't make blank, I need to stop doing it and say, is this worth my time, energy, or effort? I should be able to trip over making this money. The second number is the number that you think if everything goes pretty well, not perfect, but you should be able to make this number. That's what we call yellow light. And green light is, oh my gosh, everything worked out great. In fact, we should consider throwing more fuel on the fire because we just hit a home run. And this is where best case scenario, everything went right. Now think about this. Once you create your one sheet, then what we do is we take that one sheet and we create a schedule. And I used to teach a class called Bold, and Diana Kokoska grabbed one of the Bold laws, and it says, if it's not in your schedule, it doesn't exist. Do we have anybody on here that likes to bet? Anybody a gambler? Anybody like an opportunity to make a little money based on betting? Who do we have?
John's nodding, so I feel like maybe he wants in.
John, you want in on this?
Sure.
Uh, and John, you won't take this, but I know that you won't. Since 2016, I tracked every hour that I've worked. I can tell you any day since 2016, if it's a work day, that I can tell you what I did every hour in the hour. Not only can I show you my calendar, I could back it up with Zoom links. I could back it up with hard data that would hold up in court. I'll bet any amount of money that I can do that. You get to pick the day. I'll give you 2-to-1 odds.
Well, I know you'd beat me, so as long as there's no money in it, because I know
Well,
you.
think about that. When I have that much confidence since 2016, when it was a work day, I could tell you how I held every hour accountable. Who thinks that I have predictable things in my schedule? Let's go to January 8th, 2022. Joanne, what do you want to bet? I'll bet you a code. What do you want to bet? Jeff, can you unmute her and bring her
I
on?
will bet coffee next time I see you.
Perfect. Well, let's look at this. So, and again, are we an adult? Are we all adults here? In January 2022, we had an extra exchange kid. So I actually had time with my wife scheduled. Why? Because it wasn't happening. And I hope we can all be adults. If you're married or in a relationship and you're not having time with that person, does that make the relationship suffer sometimes? Yeah, we found it wasn't happening. If it's not in your schedule, it doesn't exist. Anything that you see in red is something that is personal or I'm not getting paid for, maybe I'm paying for it. Anything that is blue, eighth is I was actually on a trip with my wife at Snowbird. But anything that's orange is leading towards money. Like, who thinks with a schedule like this, there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to be winning? So here's what I'm going to encourage you to do. Figure out your one sheet. Then take whatever it is on that one sheet and create the schedule that will create that outcome. How many of you have a goal of getting 2 listings a month? So let's go ahead and look at the math of this instead of the drama. If you're looking to get 2 listings a month, I'm going to encourage you to have 2 listing appointments a day. 2 times 5 is 10. 10 times 50 is 500. So you have 500 appointments in your schedule that are all leading towards a listing appointment. So here's what you do. If you have 500 things in your schedule, you create if-then statements. If I'm not on a listing appointment, then I'm doing something to create a listing appointment. Is everybody tracking with me on this? If you showed up and you spent 500 appointments or 500 hours, and your number one sole purpose was creating if-then statements to create listing appointments, in every activity you didn't have to think about, it was if this, then this, who thinks that you'd end up getting 24 listings on clockwork if you could just follow that schedule? Somebody push back on me on that. Because it's simple, it's not easy. No pushback on it? Here's what you got to be able to do. How do you make the pain of not following your schedule greater than the pain of following it? So because we have our one sheet, then what we can do is we can equate, if I do this, then this will happen. I know, for example, every minute of the day is worth $1.60 to me. 24 hours in a day, it's worth $1.60 for every minute. So I know what my time is worth. So whenever I say yes to something, I'm knowing I'm giving up this much money or it's costing me this much money to do it. Some people say that I'm too intense. I don't think I'm too intense when you ask my wife and my kids on how I show up for them. And the fact that money doesn't stand in the way of what we're doing. Why? Because from 2016 until now, I have managed every hour as if it was a listing appointment. And then what I did was I subtracted out the stuff that doesn't matter. How many of us find ourselves doing way too much of the stuff that doesn't matter? Is that anybody besides me? So here's what you do. Once you get your one sheet and you got your income there, then you create a schedule that you believe as long as you follow the schedule, it can lead to these results. Oh my gosh, this is actually a great example. How many of you know who Glenn Sanford is? So Glenn called me up or reached out to me and said, Hank, can we have a call at 3 o'clock? And I could actually find out exactly when it was. And it might have been 2 o'clock. And I said, no, I have a call, but I could do 4 o'clock. He said, that's fine. Now, how many of you, if Glenn reached out, you'd say, yeah, 3 o'clock, I can do it, because here's the key. I was doing a free call. I was doing a free call, I think, for Lexi's son. I still took that call. Why would I take a free call for Lexi's son? I think it was Lexi's son, instead of meeting with Glenn. And why wouldn't I just say to Lexi's son, well, I can't meet the founder, a billion-dollar person wants to talk to me? Why would I keep my schedule versus deferring to have it with Glenn?
Respect.
Commitment.
Respect. What else?
If you start doing it, you'll start doing it with other things and it'll mess up the whole schedule.
Here's what I know. If I can follow my schedule, the likelihood of me reaching my goals is much higher than if I go at what feels good. What I make is, ego filling, or at the end of the day, I know it's if I follow my schedule, I'm more likely to reach my results than if I go of anything that feeds my ego or makes me feel excited or is urgent but not important. I know this. If I follow my schedule, I win. Anytime I don't follow my schedule, I'm less likely to win. So here's what I'm going to encourage all of you to do. Create a schedule and then make the pain of not following it greater than the pain of following it. Go do it for a year and see what happens to your life. If you treated everything that you put in your schedule at the same level that you do a listing appointment, so if you wouldn't miss a listing appointment, don't change that appointment. You'll have the math equation on exactly what you want out of life. I can promise you this. Many of you on here are smarter than me. All of you, I think, so far are better looking than me than what I can see on here. I mean, only advantage I have is I can create a schedule, I can be consistent, and I can follow it. And if I get an outcome that I don't desire, I put a new standard in place so I don't have to think, and I just rinse and repeat. Now, we fast forward to 2024. I'll make $600,000 a year right now if I don't show up. Who would like to be in a spot where you're making double what your net life income is, and you don't even have to show up if you choose not to? Now, here's the only way that you can do that. You've got to know your math, and you got to know when to subtract in order to multiply. So you might have to go backwards, and here's an arrow. You might have to give up some transactional income to go get recurring income. You might have to give up some recurring income to go get leveraged income. Have I lost everybody yet, or is this still making sense?
Could you explain those two different incomes you just mentioned?
Yep. So let's look at transactional income. So transactional income, what I find is most people, they can pay their bills on $10,000 a month. So what happens is they go from $10,000 a month in transactional income, then they go to 15, then they go to 20, then they go to 25. And what happens is their lifestyle creeps up with it, but then they got to keep that hamster wheel going. So what I'm going to encourage you to do and answer this question, would you rather have $15,000 a month in transactional income or $10,000 a month in recurring income? And recurring income, whereas on the first of the month, it just comes in like that. Recurring income for me is rather than having a real estate team, I started coaching, because really coaching could argue it's just the same as having a real estate team without the liability. So I have 10 clients that I coach at $1,000 a month. That's 10 hours in my schedule. So 10 hours in my schedule leads to $10,000 a month in recurring income. I'd rather have $10,000 a month in recurring income where I know it's coming in like this, because then there's certainty in that. How many of you have certainty in your income where you just know that it's going to be there? I'd take $10,000 over $15,000 if I knew it was coming in every single month, because once you have that certainty, then you can make other decisions like a leveraged income. Well, what would be a leveraged income? Well, it could be revenue share. It's been very fruitful for me. I've only spent 5 hours a week on building revenue share, and it's come to over $2.6 million in income by doing nothing else except for 5 hours a week. So what I want to encourage you to do is, what are the standards by which you win the game? So for example, my wife and I, we need a paid for home and $600,000 in liquid, IRAs and stuff like that to not be a burden on our kids. We don't want to be a burden on our kids. Now, is that going to lead us to have a luxurious life? Not at all, but we can split a meal at Finley's on Friday night at 4 o'clock because we get indigestion if we eat the whole meal ourselves. The reality is $600,000 is the minimum. Our net worth right now is 2.7. We're 47 years old. How often should our net worth double? Every 7 to 10 years, right, John? So if we're at 2.7 right now, we're 47. I plan on working another 20 years. We should be able to be at 9 million by the time we're at retirement age. 9 million is way more than 600,000. So there's nothing else we need to do. We just need to continue doing what we're doing. And this is the number one question I want everybody to write down from today's talk. If I just continue doing what I'm doing, what is it that we don't achieve? Let me say that again. If I just continue doing what I'm doing, what is it that I don't achieve? And if your answer is nothing, keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And here's where most people get it wrong. They get bored and they go screw it up. Most of my coaching clients right now, we have a 10 or 15-minute phone call just to make sure they don't screw it up, because here's what you need. You've got skill set, time on task, experimentation till you get a victory. Once you get enough victories, you get some confidence and you're no longer experimenting where you know, if I do this, then these victories will happen. And then you just rinse and repeat until you get into momentum. And once you're in momentum, you can make 80% of the money by doing 20% of the work. Let me repeat that. When you first started in real estate, you didn't have the skill set. You needed time on task and you were experimenting. So you were spending 80% of your time to get 20% of the results. Then what happened? At some point, you identified the 20% that makes the 80%. And here's where most people get it wrong. They continue doing the 80% that makes 20% of the money versus subtracting it out. What I'm going to encourage you to do is, once you identify that 20%, subtract out the 80% and bring in a new success code. Would you like to? Now you talk production. Am I going too high level? Do you want to get more into production now, or what do you want to do?
Let's do it. Let's go into production. I mean, I love the high level, by the way, because we've got such a great mix on this call. I look around, we literally have some $1 million producers on here. We've got some awesome, and we have people who are like, they got licensed 15 minutes ago. So we've got a really broad audience here, and we're going to distribute to an even broader one. And yet I think there's an opportunity here for everyone to carry something forward and pay this information forward as well, Hank. And I love your perspectives on production.
Okay, are you guys seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, give me just 1 second. Are you still seeing the Google slide?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We're going to talk production. So now that we talked about the one sheet and we've talked about writing that down, here's the challenge that we run into. You can only manage so many relationships. Would we all agree with that? And how I came to notice this was I saw that someone's dad died. And for those of you that don't know, my father-in-law died a little bit over a year ago. And I could finally talk about it without crying because he lived next door. He was super close to me. And when he went into hospice, I was able to step away and help him transition. Why? Because I didn't have to worry about cash flow and I didn't have to worry about income. So I could just be a human being. Who would like to be in that spot when your family needs you, that you can go and do that? So how this came about was about 10 years ago, I saw that someone's dad died and the extent of my activity or emotion was a sad face. And I thought to myself, what is wrong with me? And here's the reality. You can only carry, gosh, what's it called? Alex Ramosi just did this. There's a law where you can only have about 150 relationships before they start to deteriorate because of how many you have. Dunbar's law. It's called Dunbar's law. Well, when I did my research, I came up with about 120. So here's what you got to be able to do. Think of this like a football team. You have 11 people on offense. You have 11 people on defense. Well, those are 22 players, but at the pros, you don't have people that are playing both sides of the ball, and you can only have so many people on your football team. Look at your one sheet and say, okay, who do I need on my team to go reach the one sheet? You can have about 120 relationships. So let's look at production. The most profitable business model when it comes to real estate is 24 listings 12 of which are buyers. Let me repeat that. 24 listings, 12 of which are buyers. And here's why. That's 24 clients, 36 deals. You can do that without a transaction coordinator, without an assistant. You have your hands on everything, so you catch problems before they become problems. You do an outstanding job where you're getting headlock referrals. How many of you guys like headlock referrals? The only way you get headlock referrals is you knock it out of the park. So here's what I'm going to encourage you to do. Figure out how many deals it is that you want to do, and then I want you to look at your top 36 relationships. And if you are looking to do 36 deals, here would be my standard for a relationship. They're either going to do a deal with you or put somebody in a headlock to work with you. Do a deal with you or put somebody in a headlock to work with you. How many of you, let me stop the share. Hey, Jeff, can you stop the share? Perfect. So here's where I'm coming with this. If you want to do 36 deals and you have 36 A's, would every one of them know 100 people? Yes. So if they all know 100 people, we know the ratios. If there's 100 people that they know, somebody's going to buy a home or sell a home in the next 12 months. The question is, how far out of their way will they go to refer you? Who's ever had a headlock referral where it's like, hey, Jeff, if you don't work with Hank, we're no longer in a relationship because do you remember when I was going through this? This is what Hank did. And I know it has nothing to do with real estate, but I feel like I owe him one and this is how I could repay him. Would you do me a solid like that? Right. I want referrals like that. Agreed? So think about this. If you have 36 A's, now your job is to go figure out how to help them win in life. And the majority of people that I help win in life has nothing to do with real estate. It has to do with maybe being a better father, whether it's getting sober, whether it's being a better husband. Go help them win in life, and real estate will be a natural progression. Fair or unfair? Now, what happens is as you have more sex, the more, is anybody paying attention still? I just wanted to see it.
100%. Gotcha.
Okay,
I'm in.
The more success you have, you'll need less people to get the outcome. And here's what I mean by that. Who's ever gotten a referral or a relationship where you know you can count on one deal a month from? Like I had a builder that I worked with. I knew I was going to do one deal a month from. So that what that does is it gives you margins. So now instead of needing 36 people, I only need 24 because 12 transactions will come from one person. So then you ask Hank, what would you do with the other 12 A's? Well, because we're in the EXP world, maybe you have 24 A relationships that are helping with your real estate business. And then you have 12 relationships that are helping build your rev share business. See, what we're going to do is we're going to take our one sheet and we're going to assign so many relationships to each of those areas. The less relationships you need in order to get the outcome, remember, subtraction leads to multiplication. The less relationships you need to reach each areas of those income, the better, because then you have margins. Is everybody tracking with me? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick the A relationships and figure out how to help them. And then if they're givers, they're going to want to know how to help you. Fair? I don't ever want somebody to do something for me unless I know how it's sustainable. One of our core values is how it's sustainable, because if I don't know how it's sustainable, I don't feel good about receiving. Who besides me doesn't want to receive something if you don't know how it's sustainable and the other person's winning? Here's what I find. If you get 36 A's and you help them win, they're going to help you win. And then you have 96 B's. And if you have 96 B's, they're people that you might not get as much time with. So I would look at Jeff and Lexi and as B's that are treated like C's, because we don't get a lot of time together, but we've had a lot of time together where the second that they need something, I treat them like an A because they've never wasted my time. Is everybody tracking like this?
Can you address that? Here's one thing that I know sometimes happens for people with this type of let me get rid of all this NASCAR stuff. Hold on. Sup. There we go. All right. So sometimes people feel friction when it's like build a relationship so that it will help you build your business. And that can, when I think introduced to new ears, feel like a take.
No, I didn't say that. So So here's, and I get why you're saying that, and stay on here
Right.
because I think it's a great point. Remember when we said relationships, energy, finances?
Right.
Take care of your relationships, make sure you have have the right energy. You don't have to worry about your finances because you're not stupid. This is
Right.
the part where we're not being stupid. We want to make sure that on an Excel spreadsheet, one of my mentors once said, Excel spreadsheets ruin businesses, but they keep us from being stupid. So the reality is if you have, okay, I know that if I have these 24 relationships, I feel pretty confident that I can get 36 transactions out of pouring into these 24 relationships. That keeps us from being stupid. Now, here's what happens. 12 months from now, just like when an NFL team says, hey, we got a quarterback and we got a backup quarterback, 12 months from now, we look back and we say who performed and who didn't perform. We look back and saying, hey, knowing what we know now, this person, we poured into them and nothing came back. Who's ever given to a taker? And there's sometimes you pour into people and they never have an opportunity to give back, and that's okay. But if somebody has an opportunity to do something back for you and they choose not to, that's where I insert judgment. For example, I had one of my coaching clients have a disaster. They had a flood, their real estate business was turned upside down. I offered for them to move in with my family, start over, help build their coaching business. And then guess what? They chose to join EXP and they said they're making a business decision to join through someone else. Perfect. Hey, no problem. But guess what? That's not something morally and ethically I would have done in the same situation. Plus, I'm top 55 in our company. I think I'm pretty good at what I'm doing. So they get the right to choose what they want to. However, if I was in that situation, I wouldn't have made the same decision. So my standards are if you do something morally or ethically different than what I would do in a situation, then I get to cut you out. How many of you, like, if somebody does something morally or ethically than what you would do, you just cut them out? Here's why I cut them out. Because there's a little boy in me that wants to get even and wants to hurt them. And I don't want to hurt them if I actually care about them. So I have to cut the power so I don't put energy there. Now, Jeff and Lexi, when they decided not to coach with me anymore, that's okay. You know what I did? I just didn't spend any more energy there. So when we walked out of the room, I turned the light switch off. There's no energy going there. And then when they reached back out to me, here's what I did. I just turned some energy on there and there's energy there again, and it's sustainable. If Jeff and Lexi screwed me over, here's what would happen. I try to turn the light switch off and there's still energy going there and I'm burning energy. And you can't have things that take energy from you and there isn't a proper return. Does that make sense, Jeff?
Yeah, it's perfect. It's super helpful because I think the differential there that I'm hearing is not transactional. It's purely relational. And then you also still owe it to yourself, your family, the people who count on you to evaluate so that you're not expending energy Jeff, where it doesn't produce a return. Yeah.
If we're in an A relationship, which means that we talk on a weekly basis, we are both aware of our goals. You reached your goals. I didn't reach my goals. How would you feel about that if I had a big part of you helping reach your goals and I didn't reach my goals? Would that bother you?
Yes, awful.
100%, because if you have a team player and someone who's a giver, they're not okay with you winning and the other person not winning because it just doesn't work that way. And here's where I'm getting at. You do this for 3 years and you properly frame relationships and they're givers. You let people know how you win and how you lose with each other. And I promise you this, you'll never outgive a giver and they won't be okay with you not winning.
Right.
And so all my A people, they all know what Hank's going after. They all know with what Hank's trying to win with. And the reality is I'm not trying to win with a whole lot right now. So I'm making a ton of deposits. And come this fall, if I decide to relaunch my coaching program, guess what? I'm going to call in some of my favorites, say, hey, can I talk to your group for an hour and then sell them for 10 minutes?
Yep.
Do you know how many people I have? Because I'm not going to sell anything on this. Do you know how many people I have that will invite me to come back because I made the deposits already? A bunch. Any more questions on that, Jeff?
No, other than, let us know what the link is so we can distribute it when you go live.
Perfect. Let's go over one more number, 50-25-1. And you see this right here. It's also tattooed right here. The reason I have this tattooed is this is how I've seen people build the relationship-based businesses. You get to the end of the year and you're like, man, that was a good year, but like, can I do it again? Who's ever felt that where you're like, man, business just came to me and I can't really predictably show how we did it. And here's how I came up with it is I studied a lot of us that had the relationship-based businesses. And looking back, this is what they all did. They got in front of 50 people a day. So for me, I drove a Prius with my face on it. Did everybody in my town know that I sold real estate when, I'm driving a Prius and the face was like, I mean, it wasn't that bad, but it was pretty bad. Everybody knew that Hank sold real estate. So I got in front of 50 people a day. Now, in bold, the old class that I used to teach, you had to have 20 conversations that went something like this. Hey, Jeff, do you know anybody looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? I'm sorry, that's not me. Anybody else feel that way where you don't want to be that guy that's just pounding the phones? And I've done it. But do you know anybody looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to be human. And when you have 20 conversations a day like that, when you know anybody looking to buy, sell, invest in real estate, only 5 of those were actually real conversations. The other 15 you were just annoying. So what you're going to do is you're going to get in front of 50 people and then you're going to have 20 handshakes, as I call them. You know, when you shake someone's hand and they like squeeze it really hard and you're just like, you're a jerk. Or you shake someone's hand and you're like, good God, I'm married and whatever just happened there, I haven't felt since high school. I need to be careful. There's an energy exchange, right? I look at the 20 as an energy exchange. And if you're on goal, you're looking to have 5 conversations. And here's what a conversation is. It gets to go 2 ways. You find something out about them. You have a 2-way conversation and then you can follow up with them because the key in any business and any goals that you're going after is consistency and follow up. Follow up, follow up, follow up. And you want to have one conversation when you can remember where you were when you had that conversation. John, I can remember a couple conversations that you and I have had. I can remember where I was when I was having that conversation. Remember my retreat home? You actually helped encourage me to sell it. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah.
And you know what? For the time, it was absolutely the right call. We were just going into COVID. We had a 36-acre, 5,000 square foot log retreat home that my clients would come to, but we didn't know what was going to happen with COVID. And John, you were basically like, hey, dude, if you sell it, what's at risk? Really nothing because we were making money. It put us in a much better spot. And I can remember exactly where I was when I made that decision. Now, think about this. You have 365 conversations over the course of the year where both of you can remember where you were when you had that conversation. You start digging roots within the community, within the world, because if you have a conversation that helps impact another human being and they all know 100 people, now that's 36,500 people within arm's reach at a human connection. And you just rinse and repeat it. Do it every single day. 50 connections a day is 18,000 connections over the course of the year. Do you think there's 36 real estate deals and 18,000 connections? 100%. But here's the key. You can't be neutral. I'm not neutral with people. 5 years ago, I ended up doing a speech and I was in my swim trunks. John, you were at that, weren't you? Were you, Jeff?
Was that at EXPCon?
It was. I stood up in front of a couple hundred people and I took my hat off. I said, I've been bankrupt. I took my shirt off. I said, I've been through marriage therapy. I took my pants off and I don't know, I said something. But at the end of the day, if you can give up looking good and being right, you're going to have a lot more success in this world. But so many people are concerned about looking good and being right versus just doing this, doing the work. You are 3 to 5 years away from everything that you want. And if you're a little slower like me, it took me 10 years, but I'm financially independent now where I never have to work another day again in my life as long as I don't do anything stupid. How many of you would be willing to follow a schedule 3 to 5 days a week for 5 to 10 years knowing you'd never have to work another day in your life? It's just math. And what are you willing to give up in order to do it? So we've gone 50 minutes. What I'd like to do, Jeff, if you guys are open to it, we can dive deeper into any parts of this. And when it comes to production, all it comes down is to you doing the work and being in front of enough people and helping them solve problems and then giving them an opportunity to help you back. That's all you got to do, rinse and repeat. It's not rocket science.
You know, in today's world, what's been interesting to me, and I remember you talking about this as you were really how would I say, formalizing your thoughts around how you wanted to teach this before you even rolled out Net Life and 36 to Life and some of the programs that you've done over the years, which have been amazing. And I know transformational. We have a lot of people on here who've been through your stuff, and I'm sure we'll go again. Um, what's interesting to me is how well this also is applicable in like the social media world. And I remember you talking about that on stage, I think, about this is, it's not like you don't have to reject social media. However, it's not, instead of it being a time wasting tool, can it be a relationship building tool that's
100%.
actually scales to this 50-25-1 where this is being leveraged in a global way or in a geographic way, maybe if you're building your real estate business?
Yeah. So, I mean, I built $1 million revenue plus stream in coaching via Facebook 100%. I built 1,000 person organization 100% via Facebook. I built a digital, I'm pretty sure we passed $1 million in revenue on digital media, meaning through courses and stuff. So that's 3 different revenue streams since 2016, all on doing 50-25-1, almost exclusively based on Facebook with not spending money. And here's how. You do a post. So if you're on goal, you can lead receive. If you're off goal, you have to go and do it. So when you're off goal, what the equivalent of social media is, you go and like 50 people's posts. And the reason is you like 50 people's posts that you want to be in relationship with it or that are your target. So for example, if you're looking to grow your revenue share, but you're not looking to do it right now, you could start by planting seeds and liking 50 agents' posts that aren't with EXP. All you're doing is liking the post so the algorithms start working for you. Then what you're going to do is when you see something, you're going to comment and you're going to be human. So for example, I went on a hike this last weekend. And when I went on the hike, I did some stories. And then on those stories, I can see who viewed them. Well, there's people viewing them that I didn't even realize that I was still Facebook friends with. So I might go to their page and I might comment on something to get the algorithms even more going. Then when I comment on something, they might comment back. That's the 20. From the 5, I might move to DMs. Now, use emotional intelligence. If I'd have no problem DMing John, but I might be a little more purposeful with DMing Lexi. Would we all say that's fair? Like, no, have emotional intelligence and know when you're sliding into someone's DM. And then I'm going to look to upgrade it to a one-on-one Zoom call. Here's why I look to upgrade it to a one-on-one Zoom call. If you can provide value and ask great questions, then you could start to form that relationship. So all I did when I jumped from Keller Williams to my own coaching company was I knew I had to get in front of 50 people, and I did that by liking, went to comments, slid to DMs in order to upgrade to a real conversation. And if you can have one powerful conversation times 365, all the deals that you want to do there are in referrals, not in leads. And here's the key. These upgraded Zooms, I'm not looking at them as a lead. I'm looking at them as a referral. So all I'm looking to do is serve that person. And if I serve that person, there's a good chance that they'll give me a referral to talk to somebody else. Who would rather have a referral than a lead? And so that's all you do is you look at where your goals are. So if my goal, well, I'll just tell you my goals. We're going to sell 36 net life formulas in 2024. So if we're going to sell 36 of those and I'm doing 50-25-1, my 50-25-1 will be dedicated to who can I move into the net life formula. So I'm starting to do that now. We've got 46 people on here. So that takes care of my 50. Some of you may interact with me, request a Facebook friend or whatever. I'll start to 20 so that come fall, we've built the relationship. We've built the rapport. You've seen other people that have coached with me. You see how other people do it, where then I can sell you into the program or the transformation. But I'm starting it now. Is everybody seeing where, even when I wanted to get my wife pregnant, even when I got her pregnant, we still had 9 more months before the baby came. And what I want a lot of us to look at is stop looking at this as a short-term game and start working what you're looking for where you're looking 6, 12, 18, 24 months down the road. Does that make sense? Everybody tracking with that? But so many people are only looking 30 or 60, 90 days in front of them. Until you get some margins, then we can start playing chess and start saying, hey, I'm playing 5 years from now. My net life formula is more about a 5 year play than it is a 6 month or 12-month play. And I didn't launch like I was going to when NAR all disrupted, just because I had margins and I didn't feel like dealing in all the chaos and drama of what was going on. I'm like, I'm going to take the summer off and I'll launch it in the fall. Because I'm not worried about cash flow, because I don't need the money now. I don't need that money in, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, a year from now. It just needs to come in at some time in the next 10 years. Who would like to start playing games like that where you're making chess moves for further times out and you can make more deposits before you take withdrawals? So to kid ourselves to think that we could cover all of what I'm covering right now in an hour and a half, we can't. So here's what I'm trying to get you to do. I'm trying to get you to believe in what we're throwing. Like, I don't understand it, but I believe it. Zig Ziglar says, be, do, have. Be, do, have. My goal is to get you guys to believe that I can help you get from where you are to where you want to go. I'm not holding anything back. I'll share everything that I have here. There's no secrets. I'll share everything, but I also know that you won't be able to get it all, so you're going to need time on task. You get time on task by going and watching every video I've ever done. Julie Younger is a good example of that. She's watched every single video. She's having a huge success right now. You help enough people get what they want, you'll get everything that you want. So I got a little off track there. My apologies.
No apology required. It was awesome. I like this focus on long-term thinking that you're emphasizing, because we see too much on the like, well, here's what I need for next month. And I think the pivot, so maybe talk about this for a quick second. I think I've heard you speak about this before, Hank, which is, so when people are going to the grocery store hungry right now, right? And they're making decisions based on instant need. I have to pay my bills next month. I'm freaking out. Everything's catastrophic. The sky is falling. The sky is falling. How do you start to pivot into longer term thinking? Because there is chess in longer term thinking, and I love that.
Well, I'll use myself for the example. I think this would be a great example. I was making $300,000 to $500,000 a year as a bowl coach, depending on if you're looking at gross or not. But we were doing very well, and I loved the job. Here's the challenge: my wife went with my son to go and get deodorant. That was not something that I was willing to continue to have happen. I'm missing out on those life events. So my wife and I asked ourselves, what's the worst that could happen? Well, I jumped ship. I have to start over with a non-compete. Well, what if we can't get our income back up to that $10,000 a month, because $10,000 a month was paying our bills? I said, well, we might have to take on some credit card debt. We might have to take on a mortgage, a second mortgage. We might have to sell our dream home that we just built and move in with my mother and father-in-law for a 3-year period, whatever the case may be. But here's the thing is, my 12-year-old would go from 12 to 15. I wasn't willing to give up those golden years, those 3 years, in order to just keep the lifestyle. So we were willing to sell our dream home if we couldn't get things figured out, and go backwards because we weren't willing to give up the golden time of our kids. So here's what happened with us. We had $86,000 saved up in cash, and every day I was doing 50, 25, 1. In July of 2017, we got down to our last $1,000. Now, here's the thing. I was following my schedule, doing the work. I wasn't panicked because I was doing within while doing without, and I knew my numbers were, if I just continued doing what I'm doing, I knew all the seeds that I planted would take root, and we would end up having a harvest. In January of 2017, it'd be 2017. 2017, we had a $100,000 net month. Net. It's after all expenses paid. Who thinks 12 months was hard because we were drawing backwards, and we went way backwards. I mean, we were at that weird spot, like, can we actually do this? We got through it, and Seth Godin, I think it's Seth, has the book called The Dip. You got to know when you're going in a dip, when you're going off the ledge, and when you're just kind of stuck in that middle land, in the cul-de-sac. We knew that we were just in a dip. We had a $100,000 net month, 13 months in, and everything broke loose. So sometimes when you're transitioning, you have to choose what you're going to suck or embrace the suck. we decided for 12 months we're going to embrace the suck of doing within while doing without by spending a little less money, by changing jobs and not having that certainty. And John and Jeff, you guys know my financial situation now. Who thinks that by me taking that risk and drawing the arrow back, the income that we make now is much better than the income we used to make back in 2015?
Better in terms of bigger, and also better in terms of what it does for your life.
100%.
Yeah.
And there's no, I would say this. I'm probably impacting less lives by doing it this way because I'm not on the road digging deep, and I'm fully aware of that. But we're playing an infinite game, not the finite game. But when we look where I was in 2015, I had to go backwards in order to go forwards, but I knew my math. And it was just a matter of a math equation of saying, okay, we're going to go backwards here. So some of you might need to give up that car, driving the $60,000 car that's leveraged. I mean, having debt right now, if you have debt right now, I would encourage you to figure out what you need to do to like free some cash up, because I think we're getting ready to go into a storm. And I'm not like fear mongering. I sold my 6-door F-250 Beast. Why? Because it was $86,000 more to put, or $85,000 more to put in my pocket right now. I'm sitting on cash and some leverage, or not leverage, but I'm sitting on options. Right now, with an election year coming, interest rates at the highest, you've got less inventory, less affordability than we've ever had. Like, I don't wish for hard times, but then skill set matters, and I know there's going to be huge opportunity, and I'm kind of foaming at the mouth right now.
Yeah, there's a word you and I have talked about before, Hank, and there's some of the things that you're saying now is that word about being ruthless.
Being what?
Ruthless.
Okay, tell me more.
Um, and you've said it before, whether you realize it or not, but that idea is that, you're ruthless with your time. You're
Yep.
ruthless with your schedule. Sometimes people think of the word ruthless as a negative, like mean. And I've learned to use that word more about how I'm ruthless with I'm looking at what needs to cut and what needs to stay based upon where I want to go. And in the same frame of how do I do that, that I'm going to serve the right people in my life versus serving people that aren't going to give back, that aren't the primaries in my life.
Well, it's only ruthless depending on whose perspective matters. So if you're watching a football game, there's the mom of the referee. Her perspective is going to be different than the coach. And at the end of the day, here's who perspectives matters the most right now. My wife, number one, then my kids. Outside of that, very few perspectives matter anywhere close to those two sets of groups, because you know why? Like, they're what matter to me right now. So my wife doesn't think that it's ruthless that I'm done at 2:30 in the afternoon. I can help pick up kids. So I don't know. Maybe some people think I'm ruthless, but not the most important people in my life, because I'm there for them.
Right. And I look at that ruthless is just more a matter of how am I looking at my schedule? Am I looking at it as tough and on myself as tough of like where things need to go and how they need to do? Because that's going to create freedom and me to be able to love people more in a different way, because I'm cutting the things that needed to be cut and I'm adding the right things in with the precision. And that's a lot of things that you're saying right now. And that's what I'm hearing is that this is, you're saying it in a very nice way. However, when you look at it, it's very structured, it's very detailed, and it's very disciplined. And none of it works without the work.
Well,
Right.
and that's why I purposely wore the shirt today, because it all comes down to doing the work. And at the end of the day, anytime you get an outcome that you don't desire, put a new standard in place, then you don't have to think, you don't have to be that smart. So again, I go back to the original question. What is it, if I continue doing what I'm doing, what is it that I don't achieve? You know what my answer is right now? Nothing. So then I keep subtracting out as much as I can to get the same outcome so that I have margins. And most people don't have enough margins in their life. When something comes up, it causes chaos. And then if you're in chaos, we've all been in chaos. When you're in chaos, it's just not a good position to be in. Does that, are we kind of on the
Yeah.
same
And one
page
of the
there?
challenges with that is that when we start creating margin, if we haven't had margin before, it almost alerts us. We almost aren't comfortable with it for a while.
Oh, John, I've been the least happy I've been in years. You know why? Because for the first time in my life, I'm not in fight or flight. For
Yeah.
the first time in my life, I don't have to worry about 30, 60, 90 days out. I'm in a place where I'm no longer getting those dopamine hits where, I'm actually bored a little bit. And it's been tough because most people, what they do is they keep moving the goalpost. And I think it's one of the most dangerous things in our society is more, 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 more. I'm coaching a guy right now. Let me ask you, how many of you would like this? If we do 2 chess moves, he can have all his rental properties paid off. He'll be making $35,000 a month in net income off of those. No debt, no nothing. He's 34 years old with a 4 and 6 year old, and he's thinking about doing hard money and or his real estate team. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You got the golden years of life. You're making $35,000 a month in net income, and you can, like, he's like, but dude, I'm going to be bored. I'm like, good. He goes, but I'm afraid about losing momentum. Great. You can always go back and be a warrior. Do you think anybody ever regrets being with their family more? How many regrets times do you think I've heard people regret not spending more time with their family? All the time. He's already won the game. So here's what I want all of us to do. If you're in phase one, this conversation's probably not right for you today. Phase one is where you're worried about food, shelter, and water. Because if you're worried about food, shelter, and water, you can't comprehend this conversation right now. And I'd be happy to do another call for people on food, shelter, and water, but you probably won't like it because I don't care about your feelings. And you should be working from the second you wake up till the second you go to bed. And you're going to be super ruthless with what you're doing. I don't care if you're Ubering, like you got to go make some money. And when you're in phase one, I mean, I remember I flirted with someone once because I needed them to close a deal. And I would never do that in phase three, but in phase one, I'll do whatever it takes to take care of my family. But if you live your life like that, where you're doing whatever it takes, sooner or later, it's going to catch up with you. Who's ever driven like 90 because you needed to get somewhere and the risk reward was worth it? But if you drive 90 every single day, sooner or later, you're going to get pulled over and get your license taken away. The more you get into phase two and phase three, the less you can get away with doing things in phase one. I don't do anything that puts me at risk now. I won't drive in a car with a female by myself. There's so many things that I won't do because I catch the car at the top of the hill to never allow myself to get in positions. So if you're in phase one right now, you need to figure out how to get out of phase one, and it needs to happen within 6 months. Otherwise, you might need to realize that you aren't somebody who can make $150,000 a year, year over year. Maybe you're someone who can only make $50,000 a year and adjust your lifestyle so that you don't end up being completely, ridden with debt and stress for the rest of your life. And that's why I'm saying first thing we got to do is figure out if you have an income problem. I know this. I can go make $500,000 a year 10, 15 different ways. I just need enough runway to get there. So if real estate fell apart tomorrow, it'd probably be a blessing to me because then I'd be forced to go find it a different way, which then would have probably more scalability and more margins, and I'd probably like doing it more. But I have so much invested into real estate that I don't want to jump out of this lane completely. Can anybody relate to that, or is that just me? Any other thoughts or questions? I saw what do you recommend someone do with leverage or high cash reserves for the coming storm, especially if they are starting in real estate, or which niche should they pursue? I would have to ask a bunch of questions to answer this specifically for you, but here's what I'm going to say. When you're going into a storm, you cannot have too much reserves. But I need to know where you are in the game. And this is why if you don't have a P&L, you don't have your finances, we need to know if you're in the second half or if you're at the end of the game and we got 2 minutes left, because they're going to be two different decisions based on where you are. If you're 35 versus 55, it could be the same scenario, but just one person's 35 and one person's 55. They're going to be two different sets of decisions based on those circumstances. So Jeff or John, get on here. Here's what you got to be able to do. Here's where most people get it wrong. They start prescribing before they properly diagnosed. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say somebody's overweight. Well, you got to eat better. Well, maybe not. Why are you overweight? Well, you've been drinking more. Well, why are you drinking more? My wife's a nag. Well, why is your wife a nag? Like, you got to make sure you're actually solving the right problem. And 9 out of 10 people that I end up doing a discovery call with, they're trying to solve the wrong problem. They're trying to solve the symptom. Because if you can properly diagnose and identify what the real problem is, then it's usually pretty easy to prescribe, and it's just a math equation. Here's the proper problem that we're trying to solve for. Here's the prescription. And then you just got to figure out how to do the prescription long enough to get the result. But 9 out of 10 people are solving for the wrong problem. It's not, it's not that hard to win in life if you properly diagnose the problem and then know what you want, and more importantly, know what you don't want. Here's what I don't want. I don't want an affair. So guess what? I don't drink after 9 o'clock if my wife's not around. I don't put myself in positions where all of a sudden I could have an affair, because guess what? Sometimes do I lack the want and desire for my wife after 20 years? 100%. Who besides me knows somebody that you like and respect that's had an affair because they'd made a bad choice in a bad situation in a bad moment? My mother and father-in-law, they both had affairs. Guess what? They're some of my most favorite people in the world. I know that I'm prone to having an affair. So guess what? I don't put myself in those situations. Is this helping, or am I going too far down the rabbit hole? Like, if you know that you're prone to something, put yourself in position so that you can never do that. Figure out the life that you want. I want my kids to have the same mom and dad for the rest of their life. Well, guess what? I need to make sure I don't do anything stupid to make my wife leave me. Is this
Hey,
making sense?
hey, Joe Yates here. Hey, I love what you're saying, man. And even on that and everything else like that, it's just that's just discipline. It's for you. I mean, everything is like choreographed. You
Yep.
sat there and you set boundaries. You set boundaries on your schedule. You set boundaries on being brutal with your time. You set boundaries on making sure you're not going to put yourself in a bad situation. So I love all that, and I think that discipline is one of the things that the majority of us lack. And when you said that, for the people that are, trying to have food and shelter right now, that this is maybe too far over their head, which, possibly to a degree. However, at the same time, I remember you saying, probably more than once, but I've reset it 100 times, where you said you can't out earn stupid. And I swear to God, I've spent the last 6, 7, 8, 10, 20 years trying to prove you wrong. No, you can't out earn stupid. And that's a lot of what this is right here, and creating the margins and stuff like that. So I think that when you're at that survival mode, I mean, even at that mode, you have to set margins.
Yep.
You don't go out and buy a new car if you're, trying to put food on the table, or at least not a nice new car. So even at that time, you're still trying to create the margins to be able to have the
You have to
sustainable
decide when you're
lifestyle.
going to peak.
Yeah. So later on, when you start making more money, if you haven't set those things up, I mean, I do deals all the time for people that have, like, they make $40,000 a year, but they're way more liquid than people that are making $500,000 a year. It's kind of like the richest man in Babylon book, where it's like you're all
Yeah.
broke and you all make different amounts of money. So I love what you're saying, because it is applicable across all, income levels, and regardless of how long you've been in the business. It really speaks to a guy like me, because, income is not a problem, hasn't been a problem.
Here's what I'm going to encourage all of you to do. If you want to book a call with me, we'll get massive awareness around where you are and if that's where you want to be or where you want to go. And then it's just a matter of saying, this is what it's going to take. We would spend 60 to 120 minutes figuring out where you're at, figuring out where you are on the field, where you are in the game, what the score is, how, do we have a high scoring offense? Because if you make a lot of money, then we just have to choose what we're going to do with chess moves to make sure that we're not there. Because here's my fear for you. You don't change something, you're going to get punched in the jaw and you're going to be in a bad spot. When my son had to have open heart surgery and I couldn't choose between going to work or going to the hospital, and I had to go to work because we financially couldn't afford for me not to work, I said, never again. So when my father-in-law had to enter hospice, I didn't have to work. And do you know what a privilege it was to help him for a year? At the end, I'm changing his diaper. I mean, to help a man transition from being a man's man in over a 2 year period, being where I had to help change his diaper. I don't think there's a greater honor that I could have in life, because 14 years earlier, I made a decision that I wouldn't have to exchange dollars or hours for dollars. And I put myself in a position where my family, where I could show up how I wanted to, not how I had to. I promise you, if you want to be in a spot like that, we can get you there. You might not like me and you might do it kicking in, but I'll hold a mirror up and say, hey, dude, Question is, are you willing to do what needs to be done to do that? Most people aren't. But what if it took 7 years? I'd rather see someone take 7 years and have a life while doing it than take 5 years and be miserable doing it. So many of us want to solve a 10-year problem in 10 minutes. And that's where I think our coaching industry has gone wrong. If you come coach with me, it's going to take us 5 years to get where you want to go. In the first year, you're going to have way less results than what you want. We overestimate what we can do in 12 months. We underestimate what we can do in 5 years. Jackie Bowman is a beta. Monica Weekly is winning with, her rev share. Matt Plummer is winning. These are all one-on-one coaching clients that stuck with me that have enough money in revenue share now where they don't have to work ever again.
What I want to do, we've got a couple minutes left. If people do want to reach out, Hank, I know that you had mentioned maybe later this year doing the reboot. And what I've seen powerfully is that if people really do want to right side their production, right side their business, and also make changes in their life, it's worked with us. I know we made powerful adjustments working directly with you. I know with John, it's also been really transformational. Is there well, first off, do you mind coming back when that's live so that we can really roll that out internally?
No, it won't be until after Labor Day because I'm taking the summer off.
Perfect.
I do have room for a few people if they want to jump in early just because we are building out. So I'm going to go one to many. And I want to be able to help more people. And I've been stuck at helping one-on-one in small groups. So what my wife is doing, who has a project manager group background, is she's watching me bring people one-on-one through, and we're creating systems and stuff to bring many through. So we'll launch that after the fall because I want to enjoy the summer.
Awesome. Love it. Well, we'll be sure to integrate that when things come forward. And if people want to reach out to you, just social, or what do you want?
Yeah, just message me on Workplace or on Facebook, and here's what we'll do is we'll set up an hour-long call. I work Monday through Wednesday. We'll set up an hour-long call, and I'll just help properly diagnose. And then if it makes sense for us to work together. And the last gal that wanted to, she wasn't a good fit. She wasn't far enough along. And I don't want people's money if I can't help them get the transformation. That's my number one rule right now is I don't want your money if I can't help you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Really, really good stuff. John, any parting thoughts as we're kind of wrapping up here before we party our way out?
Yeah, one of the things I want to say is that we're all at different stages at different times in our lives. And, all of us are feeling differently right now. Many people are feeling where Joe's feeling. Some people are feeling, I have an income problem. I can't even figure out how to make money. I wish I had that problem. And all of us have been where you're at one point. Hank was broke. I mean, I know stories back, like his life was not an example, of what you wanted to be. Mine wasn't either. The places we've been 12 years ago, wondering, wow, I was ever going to pay my bills. And know that everyone's starting from one place. And what Hank's saying to you is, it's possible, guys. It's little pieces that are getting put in place at a time, but having a bigger structure of how you want it to look like. And what's the saying, Hank? We overestimate what we can do in a short amount of time, but underestimate what we can do in 5 years. Yep. And I see that now through people. And I just thank you for being on the call, Hank. Thank you for taking the time. And I love you.
Well, brother. And that's where I'm forming this coaching program through is it's going to take us 5 years to get people where they really want to go. And the reality is the first year is the heavy lifting, but then you need to stay in community. That's why I love your guys' tagline here is because then it's the community, because then the community keeps the standards. Because the thing is you can't stay in rooms if you're being a hypocrite. You'll be found out. And that's kind of what I'm creating is that movement where we'll know if you're not doing what you need to be doing. And in order to stay in the rooms, you got to continue doing what you're doing and what's important to you. So I appreciate you guys, and my energy is good. Relationships, energy, so I don't need to worry about the finances. And if you guys ever want me back, I'd love to come back.
That's awesome. Thanks again, Hank. Love you, everyone. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for spending your time. Tell a friend. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.